Welcome back to Just the Tip. Thank you so much for joining us. We are recording this on MLK Day, and today we had a special treat in the greater Seattle area. Our own Ishea Brown was on KUOW, NPR, on the radio,
Yes.
hosting.
Yes. I had the honor of being the host for the show, The Record, whose normal host is Bill Radke, and they wanted to pass the mic for MLK Day and their MLK show, and they really wanted to amplify the voices and stories of marginalized people, but specifically have the narrators be Black and brown people who are able to tell their own stories. So I hosted a show. I got to pitch them the topic I wanted to talk about. I chose mental health in the Black community. For anyone who knows me in real life, you know that I talk about mental health in normalizing the conversations around mental health and therapy. I won't shut up talking about it like I always am talking about it. So it was really cool to have the episode. The entire team that worked on the MLK show overall were all people of color, which was really cool. The community engagement team at KUOW, they've done a phenomenal job of really trying to have the stories reflect the audience that's also listening to them. And for the exact episode that I worked on in my little segment, it was all Black women leading it. So a Black producer, I was the host, and then I tapped 2 Black female therapists in the Seattle area. So that's a really cool conversation.
What was really cool too is they didn't just like put together this idea that they had and asked you to do it. They actually came to you and said, hey, can you come to us with an idea? You come to us with a show and we'll amplify it for you.
Yeah, it was definitely, I would say, more of a collaboration where they let me know what they were already working on and they let me hear some of those ideas. And then I brainstormed on what gaps I felt were missing. And I thought that this was a perfect opportunity to kind of bring this conversation to their platform and really amplify this message that in my personal everyday life I speak about all the time. So Mike, what did you think when you listened to it?
I thought it was really amazing to hear stories that I have learned from you, things, your life experiences that I've never heard on the radio or I've never seen on TV. And I hear things from you and I've learned things from you and being in your community, and then to actually hear it on KUOW, blasted over the airwaves, was really cool.
Something that I thought was interesting is about 80-something% of the stories that they tell on KUOW are told with a white narrator, and like 60-something% are male narrators, male perspectives. And so it really forced them to say, what are we missing? And this is them trying to be better. I had a great time doing it, and it was really interesting because the same week that I recorded the episode, I had what I would consider not a professional low. It was more of like a couple of bad days at work. And it was really interesting to be dealing with the emotions of something happening at work, but also have this personal high. And it made me think about the way that we have to balance life and how life never hands you everything packaged really nicely. And so when you heard the episode, Mike, and you were able to hear this perspective of having the luxury or not having the luxury of being vulnerable, and knowing that I had gone through this instance professionally where I was very emotional about it and it really affected the level of vulnerability I wanted to have at work, I know that you and I talked about it and we had kind of differing opinions a little bit. Did it make your perspective change at all?
Well, what I really was thinking when they were talking about it is you have white people have this idea of where racism happens, and we have no sense of how much an office building is that's ground zero. Like there is so much, if you really took all of the microaggressions and macroaggressions in the country, it's probably happening in office spaces more than anywhere else.
Well, yeah, you spend 40 or, quote unquote 40 hours a week in a space with people who you're only brought together to work towards a hopefully common goal.
Yeah. And I think a lot of white people, if not most or all of them, have no idea that the workplace is really where the rubber meets the road. I mean, that is really where because think about it, white people listening, think about how often your white coworkers might talk about minorities as if they know what to say about them, or they'll just say something about a minority. And think about the next time they do that, how they're not in a position to really speak about them, and they're probably wholly misinformed and saying something that really makes no sense, and also saying something that they wouldn't say if that person was in front of them.
Well, I also think that you would be shocked at the amount of things that do get said when you have people who are minorities in their workplace when they're sitting right there. And that's the thing. It's not what's being said when you're not there. It's the shit that's blatant and in front of you, and people say it to your face. And so did it make you feel anything different for me in my perspective in hindsight?
Well, I feel like I get a lot of information from you, and
that's Mike's really nice way of saying, yeah, you tell me a lot of shit.
I mean, I really don't think you're leaving much out from my experience. Like, from me, I feel like you do tell me what happens to you every day. I don't think there's a whole lot that you're not telling me.
But does it change the perspective and the context when you hear this conversation being held on such a large platform with other Black women who are medical or mental health professionals chiming in, sharing, kind of shading in the background, not just me standing there, but now you see this full picture?
Yeah, it helps. Like, the more people you hear it from, it helps, because you realize how many things are shared experiences, and how you could take anyone from any office setting and they could have a very similar experience to what any of us have had. And for anyone who is the minority in their space, there is definitely, I am learning common things that white people are doing.
So what are some things that you think you can do differently? And I would say this is where allyship begins in your workspace, knowing that your team isn't as diverse, but I think the organization you support does have diversity.
Yeah, I think you've got to shut down, or you've got to educate your coworkers if they're saying ignorant stuff. These, ignorant comments really come kind of disguised as like stories or just a way of describing someone. And when you hear someone, like a family member of mine said, "Oh, and there was these two Mexican men who were working," and I said, I knew that he knew their names. I said, "You can call them by their names. You don't have to say Mexican men."
Yeah.
I mean, is that relevant to the story? Turns out it wasn't at all.
It wasn't.
So you've got to speak up in the moment, and you've got to recognize it first. And I think people here in the Pacific Northwest who have grown up here, like myself, are terrible at recognizing it, because we think I grew up here in this little bubble where you think that racism is something reserved for other parts of the country.
And having experienced working as a Black woman in Seattle for over 6 years and working under really well-intentioned Pacific Northwest white men who would self-identify as liberal and really think that there would not ever be room for them to have something that they could do better in terms of like discrimination or anything, it's exhausting. So I'm happy the episode's out there. Again, this episode was for Black people, by Black people, and it was really an opportunity for other people to be a fly on the wall. And I'm happy. So thank you so much to KUOW for offering me that opportunity. I'm looking forward to collaborating with them again in the future. You can go to my blog and you can find out all like the information for it. So anywhere on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, it's 627. So find me on there. Moving on, I was at a girls' trip this weekend, and funny enough, Mike and I ended up watching the same documentary. We watched Aaron Hernandez. We watched his story on Netflix, and Mike had thoughts on it.
So there's lots of things that you could talk about with Aaron Hernandez and that whole documentary. What I found interesting, because I like the medical side of things sometimes, I found interesting that he had CTE when they examined his brain. And then I'm hearing about other cases of CTE and how one of the youngest people they found it in was a college player who barely played any college games, which means that this one person who they were able to look at his brain, he had CTE that has developed in junior high and high school, which means that most football players are probably developing CTE in junior high and high school before they even get to college, and definitely before they even get to the NFL.
And most of them don't get to the NFL, so that means that most of them are walking around with at least early stages of this, right?
Yeah. And there's boxing, and then women's soccer is another big risk factor for getting CTE. And it just made me start to think. And then I was telling you about this, Ishea, and then you said to me, well, you're still watching football. You're still consuming it. You are driving the market to have this CTE machine.
You're leaving just a little blip out. You had the realization that all of this stuff is happening. You had that you were interested about CTE, but then you were wondering why. It was almost as though you were putting the ownership on the organization to do something different when you are still consuming it. So I kind of thought,
well, no, I was just saying, us as a society, we're not saying to young kids, don't play football.
Yeah, you're telling them to play football because I'm watching it, and you're so attached to this sport that before you had any information about CTEs, just Colin Kaepernick taking a stand on something. I'm not necessarily saying this for you, but in general, people seeing someone take a stand about a human rights issue, people had issue with that and didn't want to stop watching. There are plenty of cases of professional football players in the NFL having all sorts of horrible treatment to women and horrible abuse, and they don't do anything about that.
But then you mentioned something, and what's interesting is that you told me, well, you're willing to give up eating animal products to protest the mass meat industry.
No, those were your words.
Well, you said like you're giving up animal products, but you won't give up football. And I really thought to myself, wait, I am willing to give up animal products, and I'm doing it to boycott the meat,
right,
to boycott the animal industry. But I am still watching football knowing that it's problematic in many different ways.
You're watching football and there's not even teams playing right now who you fucking care about.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to watch anymore.
So you're not going to watch the Super Bowl.
I'll watch the Seahawks next season, probably. I mean, I'm just being real. I'm not going to watch any more games this season. The one more game that's left is the Super Bowl, and I don't care.
But look
at
the way you're like rationalizing it to yourself. It's literally just a game. And I understand that it's a little deeper for some people, but a lot of these fucking people don't play, and they don't have a shred of athleticism in their bodies, and they're just clinging on to this source of entertainment. I know that it's an outlet for a lot of people to escape their lives, but when you look at the data and you see the deterioration of these people who are sacrificing their bodies to chase this dream, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but if you're going to look at it from that view, you could really look at almost any sport, because most sports cause injuries to the players. Granted, nothing on the scale of football.
Okay, so let's compare apples to apples. So you can, I mean, like let's compare apples to apples.
But what I really want to get to is how I am willing to make, like, if you asked me a year ago, hey, would you rather stop watching football or stop eating animal products? A year ago, I'd be like, oh, hands down, I'm going to keep eating animal products. I'll stop watching football. But right now, the way my life is right now is that I'm still watching football and I'm not eating animal products.
Why do you even care about football so much? Because I've asked you before and you've said something about growing up watching it.
I don't know. Why do I watch football? Why can't I just stop watching it?
It's like a porn addiction. It's weird. It's like, I mean, and I know that from my perspective, I'm not into sports like that. So I can be very cynical about it because whether they win or lose, it literally doesn't change my bank account.
I have grown a lot though, because a couple years ago, I wouldn't dare miss a Seahawks game. And most of my life was like that. Like
the team wasn't even winning until I moved here.
Yeah. And I would still, every Sunday, it was like, it would be a shame if I didn't watch the game.
It's a shame that there are young men literally killing themselves and dying because of their brain being injured before they're even able to purchase alcohol.
Yeah.
or do anything or vote.
Well, you want to talk about young men being sent to die before they're able to purchase alcohol? Let's talk about the military.
Yeah, and you don't seem to have a problem tuning like people tune that shit out all the time.
Don't tell me I have a big problem with how our foreign policy and how
Mike
we
has
are a
his
military
hands on
industrial
Mike
complex.
has his okay, just to paint this picture.
I am a keyboard Facebook warrior.
Mike, you don't even know how to make a post. Literally, I ask you to post the podcast and you're like, I don't know
I
how to
say
click that, so can you show me? But let me paint this
sarcastically.
picture. Mike is sitting here with his fist balled up like the Arthur meme and his fist on his hip, and he's turned straight to me. Oh, he just changed his posture. He's trying to relax a bit, but it's a little intense. If something happens to me, he did it.
So, what else are we supporting in our daily lives that we know are extremely problematic?
Everything. The world is burning. The world is trash. People don't want to recycle. People don't want to change. People don't want to change their habits, even though changing their habits can be better for them. You made a statement earlier, obviously not on the podcast, but we were just talking, where you're like, oh, I'm just one person. And so me not viewing football is like almost like it's a drop in the bucket. What does that change?
No, hold on. Actually, that's not what I said earlier was I'm not eating animal products right now. And me doing that by myself is not really making an impact. And what I thought was what makes an impact is if I can get other people to do it.
They're
with
both
me.
making an impact. You're making an impact by you making that change. And if you are to get other people by sharing your story, encourage other people to also make that change, you are having a bigger impact.
Yeah.
But I think we need to be careful by thinking that, oh, I'm just one person. Me making a change makes no difference, because that can be applied to any cause. And that's literally not true. Everything starts with one person making a change and then bettering the people around them, and it's a ripple effect. But you have to start with the fucking ripple. You got to start with the drop.
Well, yeah, you have to actually do it. But then I think that because there's like the whole trope of how do you know if someone's vegan? Well, they're going to tell you like 5 times. So I don't want to.
Also, not a lie.
Yeah, and I don't want to be that person, but
I'm the person who tells everyone that I'm wearing natural deodorant so that if they smell anything, to just give me a heads up.
But at the same time, there is incredible value in saying what you're doing, so that other people could get inspired and realize that they could do it too.
I think you need to understand why you're doing something in the first place, why you have a desire to do it before, so that you can actually then do it. Because you didn't start off being vegan. You started off months earlier actually trying to prove a point. Well, I mean, you cut back meat, but like I'm talking about when you changed your diet, when you made it a point to change the way that you consumed food. That was months earlier, and you really started by wanting to prove a point to me. And within a couple of days of trying to prove your point to me, you received different information, and then you started there. People look at your before and after picture and have been trying to, in conversation with me, attribute that to being vegan. And I'm like, no. Mike just started being vegan. The way that you see the difference in his body is you changed that while still consuming animal products.
Yeah, I actually lost weight, then went vegan.
I tell people that because a lot of people think, oh, you're going to be vegan, you're going to be like healthy. And it's like, no, you can be vegan as fat as fuck. Like you can be very unhealthy.
Oh, yeah. Also, yeah.
You can be skinny fat too.
Vegan does not equal healthy.
No, you can eat Oreos.
I eat a lot of Oreos.
Yeah. I mean, you can eat trash. And so I just tried to tell people that it's not.
I can still eat Ben & Jerry's.
But the one that we got was garbage.
Yeah, the non-dairy cookie dough Ben & Jerry's.
Bullshit. It actually tastes so bad that when I crumbled an Oreo in it, it made the Oreo taste bad. But I'm veganish, so it's like,
Mine that I picked out tasted good.
But it just makes me think that like I think that for maybe the CTE like conversation with Aaron Hernandez got you to start thinking, and maybe in a couple of months you're going to then think deeply about it again, and you'll start changing your relationship to the things that you support. Because having come from a background of advertising, all of your viewership are dollars. Your viewership is dollars. You know, you can only sell so many tickets to a game. The broadcasting deals, the advertising deals, that's where the money is at. And if people aren't watching, shows get fucking canceled all the time because people aren't watching. And if no one's watching, advertisers are not going to pay for your viewers. It's all like a consumeristic exchange. So I'm trying to explain to Mike that like your viewership matters, what you support matters. Just because you're going to hack it on your laptop and stream it from like some pirated site, whatever, you're still still matters.
That's my current workaround. That's my mental gymnastics.
This is where you were a couple years ago when you started eating a little less meat.
This is my mental gymnastics for watching football, is that I stream it illegally.
Does anyone else stream football illegally because they don't want to give them like direct dollars?
Yeah.
It's too much for me, but I think it's good that you're starting to have this conversation, and I think it's important to talk about because you are someone who's a sports fan, so I think you have more perspective and weight to the conversation. I'm so cynical about it that people typically have written me off like, oh, well, you didn't watch it anyway. And it's like, well, that's true, but it doesn't change what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I recognize that it's really hard for people to not watch certain sports because certain sports are the culture. When you get to work the next day, that's all anyone wants to talk about.
Yeah, but you can have them talk about some different shit because I don't want to ever talk about football unless it was like back in the day talking about like bodies. Like I'll talk about like a football body, but I don't fucking care who won a game. Why don't you? I have this. I challenge you for the rest of this football season. When people try to talk to you about football, I want to challenge you to pivot the conversation to something else naturally and not make it like, not to pull out, a pedestal and get on a high horse or anything, but just to pivot the conversation and see how that goes.
Sounds like so much fun.
Don't cringe.
That sounds like...
There's so many more interesting things to talk about than...
For sure.
Football.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about CTEs? See how that goes.
Yeah, could.
Okay, let's see.
I don't know. The whole CTE thing though, and like a professional football player doesn't tug at my heartstrings as much as like other problematic aspects of the league do.
Well, you're not speaking out on any of them right now, so why don't you just sit with all of the things that are problematic, quote unquote, and then pick one of them and make that your thing you're going to pivot to?
You act like just because I'm not saying something about it right now, I'm saying something about it right now. We're literally talking about it. We're literally talking about it right now.
But babe, I'm talking about in like it matters what you do. You are what you do consistently. Mm-hmm. Your consistent behavior is not to publicly talk about any of the problematic shit with the league. Your consistent behavior is to watch the game yourself. You don't really want to go and support it anymore at like a bar or an establishment, but you watch it and you talk about the game with friends and then you keep it moving. You're not doing anything.
You're not doing anything.
Oh, I know you are, but what am I? Okay, so speaking of people who aren't doing anything, there's people who are not dating well. And so Mike recently had a coworker come to him and ask for some relationship advice. And this is our fair warning to friends. I mean, my friends know I'm going to talk about their business, but like anonymously. But Mike.
Well, so me and Ishea have both had people.
Ishea and I
have both had people come to us with dating advice. And I love it.
No, dating questions.
Dating questions. It's advice.
Well, it'll come to us for.
Okay, semantics. So
grammar. Grammar, it's a thing.
So
Mike has gotten by life semantics. Like words mean things, and when you put them in different positions, it changes what they mean.
I jumbled the order. No one cared. So I love that people are asking us things. I do think
it's literally the only thing that makes Mike excited about recording is that when people ask.
I want people to ask us questions because I have fun. Answering and talking about people's questions. So if you're going to ask us a question, we might talk about it. We will anonymize you. So
is that a word?
Sure.
Okay.
My old coworker texted me asking about a guy, and she was like, I don't know if I'm being too forward and trying to hang out with someone.
But don't you give a backstory about how they met, or like what's the level of relationship going into her asking this question?
Well, when someone asks you for relationship advice, I think now you have to ask some probing questions, because if you just give advice without knowing the full story, you're probably going to give bad advice. So you got
sometimes people want you to give advice not knowing all the information so that you can co-sign they're crazy and you can just tell them what they want to hear.
Yes, as was the case with your person who contacted you asking for advice.
That was an interesting thing.
So you got to ask probing questions. So this person, my old coworker, met this guy through his roommate who she's friends with, and they've been messaging through chat on their cell phones.
Oh my God. Okay, boomer. Okay, fucking boomer.
And
have they hung out in real life before?
In group settings, but
never alone.
Never on a date.
Okay.
And so she said that she asked him to hang out and he had to go out of town. And so I said, well,
did she say how she asked him to hang out? Did she ask him on a date? Did she ask him to hang out with friends?
Yeah, see, I should have asked those probing questions.
Because it matters.
I should have asked those questions,
okay.
But I wasn't being thorough enough. So I said, yeah, when he's back from out of town, go ahead and ask again. And then I told you, Ishea, that went down.
Well, you said that she felt...
she was like, are you sure that's not like too much? And I said, I did ask, do you think it's too much? And she didn't think it was. So I was like, okay, go for it. Ask again.
And when he was telling me this story, I was like, no, fuck no. They've already hung out in group settings. She asked him out already. He said he was going out of town. I don't know about you all, but if I have a shred of interest in someone and they ask me out and I know that my schedule doesn't allow for it that immediate time, I would suggest another time, or I would leave the conversation with some type of, okay, well, let's connect when I get back, or what about this date? I mean, you're going out of town, but you're fucking coming back. You're not moving away forever. And especially I think if you're someone, whether you're a man or a woman, or you're non-binary and you're fucking neither of those, if you ask a person out and they don't give you anything to go off of, I would say let it sit for a while and, kind of leave the ball in their court, because people who are interested act interested. I've never in my life, specifically for them, since it's a man and a woman, I've never met a man who was interested, who acted like he was not interested and would have just left the ball there. Someone you've hung out with already, someone who asked you fucking out, all you had to do is say yes.
Yeah.
And so when I said this to Mike, he was like, oh no, did I give her the wrong advice?
I may have.
And I asked him, I'm like, well, think about it. If you if you and I were in the same situation and I asked you out and you were going to be out of town until Sunday, what would you have said?
I would have taken that as license to low-key harass you to hang out with me.
Yeah. So my thing is,
that's
this
like
is
a blank check
baby,
to invite you out, to take you on a date.
Interested people act interested.
Yeah.
And so I just feel for your coworker, because dating nowadays, with most people being so flighty and full of shit, it's, I would say to just match the level of energy that someone is giving you. And that could be said for friendships, for whatever. And I think it's a really good way for someone who finds themselves feeling needy. As someone who has been fucking needy as shit sometimes, it's a really good way to manage your energy and expectations if you kind of let the other person level set for what you're putting into it.
I don't think you absolutely need to match someone's energy, though. A lot of
You're also the person who did too much, and I let you, when we first started dating, set the pace until you did too much, and then I had to set the pace for you, and then you matched where my pace was.
Yeah, but
why?
Maybe things would have been different if I didn't pursue you as hard. If I played it if I tried to match
Baby
your
cakes,
energy.
This isn't playing it too hard. This is for, I specifically said, if you are someone who finds yourself feeling too needy at times, a really good way to manage that feeling is to read the situation.
Is to really heavily pursue someone.
Babe, oh my gosh. But seriously,
really seriously.
I know that you don't care about words.
Pursue.
Mike.
If you're feeling needy.
I'm going to say your full name. Mike, listen, I'm saying that for people who, being honest, for people who feel as though they're a little needy, a really good practice for people who feel needy is to look at the energy that person is giving you and not to think, but to assess, am I doing fucking more than that person's doing? Especially when it's new. I think that the neediness comes in when you don't fucking know each other. You got to give it some room to breathe and get to know someone.
I don't think I've ever been good at that.
No shit. You have room to grow and being a little more self-aware. You're kind of in your own world at times, and like you don't really read the room that you're in and the situation around you. And I mean, that's one thing, but you have all these other amazing things that you excel at, but you're also not someone who tends to be needy. So I think that for your coworker.
No, I'm super needy. You are needy also, and so you don't realize it.
I'm needier. So I'm just saying that for your coworker, for someone who is already feeling needy and there's a level of unmatched vulnerability, I think that's where the neediness is coming from, because they're feeling as though they're being, I think, more vulnerable than what's being reciprocated. So a good way to kind of manage that isn't to do more. It's to take stock of what the fuck is this situation. This situation is someone who you have never spent solo time with, and they are still essentially a stranger. You don't know them personally. I think that sometimes we get in our heads about things because you've been thinking about this person more than they know you exist. And it's not to say something can't come from that, but like you have to remember that they're not where you are. And if you feel like you're being needy, I think it's because you have an insecurity, because that person may not be showing you what you want to see. And that's okay. If you're not a needy person, ignore everything I'm saying. Well, actually, don't ignore it. Put it in the back of your mind for the next time a needy person comes to you and wants advice. Just pull that out.
Okay, that's
But
great.
Mike's not needy, apparently. Like, he thinks, do too much. Be team too much.
Oh, no, I said I was needy.
No, but you were like, oh, well, what if I didn't pursue you, and what if you're not playing it cool? And it's like, it's not even about that.
I think there is a level of courtship that aids the dating process.
There is, but you have to remember that everyone does not have time to deal with your collective shit. So like
my neuroticism.
Well, anyone's stuff. Like when you're dealing with a stranger, I liked you, which is why when you were doing a little extra, that like extra for what I felt was extra, we talked about it. But a lot of times when people have someone kind of come on a little stronger, be a little extra, and typically if you're feeling needy this early on, you may be doing too much, or you may just be too insecure in the moment and you need to still go sit down and sort that shit out. Because a lot of other grown people, when they don't even know you, it can be overwhelming to have like a new/stranger person putting their like anxiety and stress and worry and whatever on you. And it's like, I'm fucking good. No, thank you. What time? Where's my lift? Oh, I'm going to go catch it down the street. I dropped a pin somewhere else. I got to go. You know what I mean?
Okay. So
we have all sorts of people in our lives, coworkers, friends, people coming to us and sharing their like dating stories. And a lot of times it's someone who's just, feeling a little insecure. And I think it's a good practice to date people who seem interested.
It sounds easy to say.
No, I mean, it's not like it sounds easy to say. There's literally someone for everyone. There are so many people out there to date. Like, don't close yourself off. Like, a lot of people close themselves off. And you and I had this conversation about it's personality that matters, because we were talking about the circle.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm going to say something really quick.
Go ahead.
The circle, they had this guy come on, and he catfished.
Adam.
He catfished as this really hunky six-pack guy, and he started terribly flirting with the women on the show because he is like just legit
using words
guy.
Like aroused.
He was a legit just creepy guy trying to flirt with women, and he thought automatically that his flirting would work because he had the picture of a guy with a six pack.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the show, he realized that it's not about what you look like. It's actually about your personality. And
Yeah.
I think that's a lost on a lot of us. We think that people aren't into us because we might look a little different. And
I think especially for men.
Yeah, especially for men. Yeah. And I mean, yes, there are people who look so different.
Mind you, this guy
also
also had a wife in real life and had been married for years. And so it's not like he didn't have a partner.
This guy was not like disfigured in a way where
no, he was just kind of like kooky.
He was just kooky, but he realized that the reason why he's never been good at flirting is not because of how he looks. It's because he's weird and doesn't know how to talk to women in a respectful way. His flirting was like atrocious. It was like what a 14-year-old would say.
I know 14-year-olds who have better game than that. I think he like I mean, when I was 14, not anymore.
I mean, I let that slip.
I just like the time we live in. You got to clarify things.
I know plenty of 14-year-olds know how to flirt.
So I just think that men really love other men, and men do things for other men. And I think that
this is Aisha's favorite thing to say.
It is, because it's true. I think that he really like was romanticizing what it was like to be one of the like hot guys, and if he was just, you know, conventionally attractive, then that would be everything. And it's like, dude, everyone who's attractive doesn't have a shit personality. So it was just kind of interesting to watch him completely fail. But I'm happy that he learned something. I actually was so happy to not look at his ugly ass clothes anymore. He was wearing like tie-dye wraps and overalls with like kitten shirts, and it was just a little bit much to have to see. But yeah, that show was pretty good.
So you've heard Aisha's
The ending
advice?
was horrible. The ending was absolutely horrible.
The ending of The Circle was so lame.
But the best part about it was Michelle Buteau. So Michelle
she was
Buteau, I'm
hilarious.
not holding against you. I mean, we don't know each other in real life.
She was really one of the only. She was the most redeeming.
Well, and she's the host, so
part
that's
of
good.
the show. Like her commentary actually made the show better.
All the new people they brought on at the end were worthless. Like they didn't need Adam, even though we're talking about him now, we're talking about him now. He was really the only person that was worth bringing on.
Yeah.
The other characters, like the new ones, were not worth it.
Forget about it.
That wasn't a good Joey. It was kind of a trash Joey. But yeah, personality matters. So, you know, think about that.
All right. So you've heard Aisha's advice. You've heard Mike's advice.
What would your advice be?
For what?
For your coworker's question.
I already gave my advice.
No, not you. I'm talking about the people who are listening. The 10 of you who are listening, what would your advice be to Mike's coworker with this dating, non-dating situation? I don't even want to call it a dating situation because they've never been alone together. It feels very like...
Well, but I mean, that's kind of how people date now. You're on you're messaging.
We're not doing group dates. We're not, unless you're in a certain religion where you got to do
You're
it.
messaging. You've never met,
God,
and then
Mike,
you set up your
sound so
date.
fucking out of touch. Mike's gonna get cast on The Circle, and he's gonna be like so fucking weird and be like, you know, I just have been married for so long, I don't know how to flirt.
We already talked about how we would go on to The Circle. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. It's been a wonderful week. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.